I had restricted myself from achieving my greatness, that I was afraid to go out into the world. Now I am in a space of wondering, who am I? And
Absolutely.
yet your mind says that you can't. We have to encourage learning and encourage trying. Here is the phenomenal one thing that is I'm so excited about. It doesn't have to be that way.
Thanks for joining me. And today in the studio, we have with us none other than Dr. Sue Carter Collins, the Mind Mastery Architect. Now, she is an author, keynote speaker, and transformational coach dedicated to helping high achieving women and conscious leaders rewire their minds, overcome imposter syndrome, and lead with grounded confidence and purpose. Her core focus has been mind mastery, whole being leadership, organizational transformation, self empowerment, and spiritual growth. And she joins us today on the Payal Nanjiani Leadership Podcast to talk about overcoming imposter syndrome. Dr. Sue, welcome to the podcast. It is such an honor to have you here with us.
Hi, Payal. It is absolutely amazing to be on this show with you. Welcome to you and to all of your guests. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. And I have seen so many of your LinkedIn posts and your videos, and I really admire the work that you are doing. I know you also have a forthcoming book, so let's also get to that. But you're talking on a topic which is, I would say, global. It's a topic which everybody faces this challenge of imposter syndrome. So, in your own life, when did you actually realize that imposter syndrome really disrupts our growth and disrupts our success?
I experienced it off and on throughout life that I was conscious of it. But here's the thing, Payel, I did not have a name for it. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that I had this burning desire to do what I consider great things,
Uh-huh.
and I would get on the verge of it, and then I would get so scared. And so it wasn't until after I retired from my position as an associate professor that I decided I have to figure out what this is. And so I began to dig deep into the research to understand what is happening with me because I felt that I had restricted myself from achieving my greatness.
Wow. So you were an associate professor earlier before you came into this field of speaking and helping people overcome their limiting beliefs and writing books. So what made you make that shift?
I'm so glad we're having this conversation. When I left the university in 2015, and I want you to listen to the narrative that I was telling myself and that I was telling other people. I wanted a kinder, gentler life. But the reality is that I had reached a point in my own um, career progression that I was afraid to go out into the world. I was afraid. I had been with the university for 15 years and I don't know when it happened, but at some point I began to say, nobody's going to hire me. I don't have anything to uh, my skill set is rusty. I'm not a quantitative researcher. I don't have what it takes to go to the next level. And so I left the university. And then I had to sit with myself to really understand what is this?
And so, is that what imposter syndrome is, where you actually begin to second guess yourself?
That is one of the characteristics. Um, Imposter syndrome, I actually think that every person experiences it in some form,
Absolutely.
but high achievers, and especially high achieving women,
Hmm.
we don't feel, we've been programmed to feel that we are less than. We've been programmed to feel that there are certain things that we cannot do. And so we internalize those beliefs. And I focus on working with high achieving women and conscious men who are high achievers
Hmm.
because your reality speaks to what you can do. And
Absolutely.
yet your mind says that you can't.
Yeah. And then
So
we second guess ourselves, we start doubting our own self. And like you said, you start questioning everything, and then that makes you play very small.
I felt when I left the university that energetically I felt constrained and I really felt lost because leaving the university, I was Dr. Collins.
Hmm.
And then stepping out into the real world, I wasn't being called Dr. Collins anymore.
Hmm.
After hearing that for 15 years, now I am in a space of wondering, who am I? And that's why it was so important to sit with myself rather than going immediately into something else. I had to sit with myself and find myself. And I think that so often we have embodied the stories that other people tell us about ourselves that we have become disconnected from who we are. The reality is that, especially for high achieving women, when you have these thoughts, and it all begins in the mind, when you
Yeah.
have these thoughts, 9 times out of 10, it's not your voice, but you've internalized the voice of others, which say, you're play
Hmm.
small, play small. And so I had to
Yeah.
begin to step
Hmm.
out of that.
I know, and I like what you said. You have to spend so much time with yourself if you want to come out of these things. But at the same time, like you said, high achieving women, high achievers, they constantly feel that they are not good enough. Like you also felt, no, I'm not good enough. I'm not able to do this. But why do we have this feeling despite having so much of knowledge, expertise, and potential? Why do we feel that way?
That is such a great question. I'm so glad you asked. This is where the neuroscience comes in. Much of the programming that we operate pursuant to has been given to us or established in early life, in our early years. And so many times as adults, it is the child who is driving the train,
Hmm.
even in adulthood. And by that I mean, if you grow up in an environment where, if you grow up in a sexist environment or a racist environment or a culturally restricted environment,
Hmm.
you internalize all of those messages. If you have parents that say you're not this, you're not that, you're never going to be enough, you
Yeah.
internalize that message. If you have parents that say you must absolutely achieve, you're an A student, you can never have anything less than that, then you will always feel compelled to be perfect, to get the perfect grade, to get the
Mhm.
perfect score. And so a lot of the imposter syndrome, we're not born with it. That is the reality. We're not born with it, but we take it on through our programming.
Oh my God. I think that you just said such a good, such a, I would say such an important message to everybody. We usually feel that when we are pushing others to do achieve more or pushing our child that you have to achieve, you have to get an, straight A, we feel we are trying to motivate them. We think we are trying to get them there. But in reality, there is something happening in that brain of theirs. There's something happening in their mind. And like you said, then when they want to be perfect in everything, they feel, okay, you know what? I cannot do this. I'm not good enough in doing this. I'm going to fail. I'm not going to be a straight A anymore.
You know, Payal, and if I may share a very personal story, I have 5 academic degrees. I have been a many things, the last 40 plus years, a career in law, criminal justice, academics. My son is deceased now. He died a couple of years ago. But before that, he and I had this conversation, and I was really very surprised. I didn't see it coming. Um, he was a vet, and so he was dealing with PTSD. And I had gone to check on him, and we're en route to the store, and we're having this conversation, and he says, "Ma, who can stand in your shoes? Who can do, you've done this, and that." And I just got really quiet. And I said, "I never expected you to walk in my shoes." He said, he said, "You never said it, but I said, I always just said, do your best. I know that my son was a genius and I expected genius level work, but I didn't realize what I was
Yeah,
doing. I was pushing him
silently.
into a corner where he absolutely felt that he had no room for error. And we do that and we
Agree.
create within their minds this whole scenario that I'm not good enough, I'm not loved if I don't do these things.
I completely resonate with your story. Having two daughters of my own, I've always seen that, they have always had this thing that, oh, mom, you're a public figure, you've done this, you've done that, everybody, knows you, and how are we going to fit? Silently, it's happening. Even if we have not said anything,
Yeah,
it just happens silently. And I'm sure it happens in everybody's homes where people have achieved so much, or they are done something, where they're recognized for their work. I think that might be some very silent messages we are giving. Like you said, we've never said it, but it just happens.
right.
So how does one overcome that? How does one help their children? And then, so that, because see, these are the people who are going to be in the workforce tomorrow. So how do we ensure that we don't pass these messages silently to them?
I think we have to separate the I love you and I will always love you. We have to separate that message from the conditional love, right?
Yeah.
And when a child, let me back up and say this as well. We have to encourage learning and encourage trying. You celebrate the effort, not the final outcome. And
Hmm.
so, if your
Wow.
child
Love
is
that.
doing their best, if they're doing their best, then you encourage them along the way. Um, you're so often what I have found when it comes to parenting is that the parent is superimposing their dream
Hmm.
into the mindset of the child. But
Hmm.
your child is not you, and you're not your child. And each one of us is a very unique being. I think her name is Carol Dweck's book on mindset, where she talks about a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. We have to take actions that encourage growth, encourage learning for the sake of learning because you love it. One of the things you said when we first came, before we came on, is you have a lot of books. Yes, I love learning. The message that I got was growing up, books are your friends. They will take you
True.
places in the world where nothing else can take you. They will allow you to interact with and have conversations with people all over the world in all walks of life, right? And
Yeah.
I think that we have gotten away from that. But the reality is that if you want to produce a whole being healthy person, then you support them as they explore the world and allow them to move on their own path because we are all spiritual beings and we're here on our own unique journey.
Absolutely. And I love what you said. That like really hit me. Celebrate the effort, celebrate the process. Don't just celebrate the outcome or the result which they are working towards. And I think this is something we can bring into the corporate also, because many of us, even if we have grown up in the most positive environment, somewhere down the line while we are working and we are growing, the more higher up we go, the more the imposter syndrome comes into that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Here is a reality. Your promotion or your career advancement will always be at least one step ahead of your self concept. And by that, I mean we are promoted oftentimes to the level of incompetency based on our prior work. But the
Yeah.
reality is, we hadn't, the new position, we've never held that before. I love to say the president was never the president until
True.
he, and hopefully at some point she becomes the president, which
Yeah.
means that you walk out of what you know and into a whole new world that you don't. And there's a learning curve. Give yourself grace to know that in time you will catch up if you do the work that's necessary in order to learn the new position. If you move into a new position career wise and you don't do the work, if you don't input the effort, then yes, you will always feel on guard, always be afraid that you'll be found out as a fraud
Mm.
because you have not embodied your own the new position, the new knowledge, the new way of being.
True. Oh my God, that is so good. You spoke earlier about I am not enough, and we have that narrative inside of us, second guessing ourselves. How do we change that? Like, what are some of the ways to reset that internally so that we can step out confidently?
The belief that I am not enough is a habit. It is
Mm,
a habit that has been formed over time.
love that. The
Wh-
habit, yeah.
I fell in love with neuroscience, and I'm just beginning to go deep into it in terms of my work.
True.
But what I realize is that the messages that we give ourselves, we repeat them time and time again. And every time we do, we're creating new neural pathways. And the only way that I know that you can stop that and actually transform is to become aware. Awareness is always the first step. So become aware of the thought, but then you must interrupt it,
Mm.
which requires you to be intentional. Do you want to stay on that cycle of you're not enough, you can't do this, you can't do that, or do you want to break it and create a new program? Because
Mm.
the narrative that we tell ourselves, the internal discussion that we may never share with anybody else, but that we're having, the body becomes addicted to it. It
Yeah.
becomes addicted to the chemicals that are released every time you say, I'm not enough.
Yeah.
The
And it wants
only
it
way
then.
to
It wants
stop that,
more of it.
yes. And so you do it over and over and over. But here is the phenomenal one thing that is I'm so excited about. It doesn't have to be that way.
Mm.
You have the power to transform your whole life.
Mm.
Now, understand, I didn't say change because change can be temporary. We change every year when we say, when January comes, I'm going to the
Oh,
gym and I'm going
yeah.
to lose 6 pounds. By by March, we're back where we started from because the
Yeah.
habitual behavior is so deeply ingrained.
Yeah, but
What
it's
we have
not,
to do,
it's sorry to cut you out there, but it's not easy to change behaviors and habits, right? Or is it?
right? It absolutely is not.
Mm.
It used to be that we would say, based on the research, based on the myth, that it only takes 21 days to create a habit.
Yeah.
Well, it takes 21 days to get you accustomed to thinking about this behavior because every day you are immersed in an internal dialogue. I'm not going to do this. I can't do this. I want to do this. But at 21 days, you go, okay, I've given it my 21 days. And we stop.
Mm. So
We're
is it
not
true?
directing.
Is that true that it takes 21 days for the brain to actually get the new habit?
That is absolutely not true.
Mm.
The new research indicates that it takes anywhere from 6 months to 364 days and
Wow.
264 days. And in some cases, it can take longer than that. Um,
Yeah. I
I
mean,
always,
21 days is too quick for a habit to change. You're right.
yeah, I have my Slinky. I love the Slinky toy.
Oh.
When I talk about when I talk about transformation, I like to play with the toy because
Oh,
if you want to
I love
change the
that.
habit,
Mm.
you've got to go deep. The deeper you go, the higher you go. The
Ah,
deeper you go, the higher you go.
how
And in
true.
terms of depth, when you think about behavior that you have been engaged in for many years, there's some very deep circuits that you have created in your brain.
Huh.
Now you must interrupt the thought, which is cutting off the energy. You cut
Mm.
off the energy to that thought, but now it requires you to care for it and like a plant, you
Yes.
water it and you care for it. And every day you continue to do this new behavior. Over time, the old behavior will be extinguished because now we are creating new neural circuits. And so the new behavior will take place. But it is a
Absolutely.
process, and it is a process that requires you to constantly be on guard because another thing that I like to say is nature abhors a vacuum. And
Yeah.
if you stop the old behavior, but you do not replace it with something new, you revert back to the old
True.
behavior.
True. And you said something about the shift in the energy. I have read that, your brain, if you don't cut those negative pattern thoughts in 17 seconds, your brains actually go into a snowball effect. How true is that?
I don't know about the seconds, but I do know that neurologically the brain is releasing certain chemicals. And
Hmm.
when you engage in this behavior over time, it's like even though you feel bad, it feels good to the body,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's so you
That
become
that depression, that
habituated
lying
to
down, that mood. Yeah, absolutely.
you, you become habituated
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
behavior because the body is craving more of that
Hmm.
chemical.
Hmm.
When I
Right.
learned that, I thought people need to know this. You need to know
Absolutely.
that you
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
there's some issues, and I'm not a medical doctor, and I do not want it to sound as if I'm saying some people don't need medical assistance.
Hmm.
The
But that's
reality
different.
is,
Yeah.
though, that is different, and most people don't need it as much as they may think they do, because when you understand the process and you begin to engage in these new behaviors consistently, day after day after
Hmm.
day, then you will reach a point where the body is no longer releasing a chemical relative to that thought. Now it is you program your mind to focus on something else. You program your mind to be. You actually become a new person, and that's what transformation is all about:
Hmm.
becoming a new person.
Wow, and that's amazing. The deeper you go into it, there is so much more that you come to know about yourself, about your mind, about how your brain functions. And I'm a believer that the universe, God, whatever you call it, has given us everything inside ourselves. And that's why you'll
Yes.
always see the success within, has given us everything inside of us to heal, to grow, to actually change any habit, because we are not a tree that cannot change. So change any habit that you want. But like you said in the starter, you have to spend time with yourself. And I think that is something most people find it very difficult to do. No time to spend time with yourself.
I am so grateful that you invited me on this show. I am
Wow.
absolutely enjoying this
No, I
conversation.
mean it's wonderful. I also want to talk before we wrap up about your upcoming book, From Mastering Your Mind to Mastering Your Life. What is that book about? And is that
That
like your
book,
second book, third? What is it like? How many books have you written?
it's my second book. My
Wow.
second book. My
Okay.
first book is called Return to Self: Five Keys to Emotional and Spiritual Freedom.
Mm,
And it is part memoir and part how to set goals so that you can move out of the old self and into the new self.
okay.
The new book, From Mastering Your Mind to Mastering Your Life, builds on that foundation, but I go deeper because I pull together uh, research and information from neuroscience, metaphysics, and psychology. I
Okay.
have as I was exploring and learning more about myself, I am one of I still am very much an imposter in some ways. I am the expert.
Ah,
I thought, more information. So I went back and got a degree in metaphysics. But I focus on spiritual metaphysics, which is to focus on who is the me that I am being and how am I being that way and where does that come from. And so the book, From Mastering Your Mind to Mastering Your Life, is a woman's guide to purpose and self-empowerment, which focuses on, like, there is a section in there on the imposter syndrome, but basically I want you to understand this is how the brain works. This is why you do what you do.
hmm.
This when you're having the thoughts, this is how you can interrupt the pattern. Here's some practical steps that you can
Correct.
use
Yeah.
to move towards your goal,
Yeah.
toward the be that
Lovely.
you are. Because I agree with you. Everything we need is within.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I completely believe in that. So when is your book releasing?
If I have the draft here, the publisher is waiting for me to get back to her. So
I know.
hopefully it will hopefully it will come out by the end of December.
So
We
nice.
have a tentative date the first week of December, but It's a book that's timeless, from mastering your mind to mastering your life. So,
That's
what
nice.
the short answer is, between December and mid-January, it should be out. I'll be doing a book
That's nice.
launch.
Yeah, no, no, I understand how the process is. I have written four, fifth one is on the way. So I can imagine that how much efforts you are putting in for this. But as a wrap up, Dr. Sue, what would be your biggest one piece of advice to the listeners who want to achieve success?
I think that, understand that you're not whoever they are, you're not who they say you are.
Mm,
You have the power to become anything, anyone that you want to. I believe with all of my heart that greatness is our birthright. I believe that we have been programmed not to believe that. And so my one word to you is, don't be afraid to sit in the silence. Sit in the silence so that you can hear what it is that universe has for you, so that you too can connect with the greatness that is within.
mm,
And don't be afraid. Understand that you will always experience some measure of imposterism, and take that
yeah.
as a great sign. It is a sign that you are moving forward toward your purpose and doing that which you're here to do.
Beautiful. That's so great. Thank you so much for being on this show. I enjoyed every second, I should say, of this podcast with you.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. And this one's for our listeners. This is Dr. Sue Carter Collins and Payal Nanjiani wishing you loads of success in your career life. God bless.